Hello and welcome to the Gaggle But We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, this week we had another unbundling of massive documents about RussiaGate, and to be honest, by now there's not really very much new to be said. I mean, the basic outlines of the story have really been known since well, probably about 2018. I mean, the basic outlines, which was, I mean, we've additional details have been added, but the basic outlines of RussiaGate, it was a conspiracy hatched by Hillary Clinton, and she's the main villain in all of this. And the second villain is, of course, Barack Obama, because Barack Obama in 2016 had been warned by John Brennan saying, that the Clinton campaign is cooking up this fake story about, the Russians are colluding with Trump, and she's doing it in order to distract attention from her server issue. So Brennan told Obama, but what did they do? They ran with RussiaGate. They ran essentially with the Hillary Clinton conspiracy. So all the other players, James Comey and everyone else, they all had their assigned role. What is interesting, however, is that the media, particularly the mainstream media, elite mainstream media, have never really acknowledged their own deceitful, mendacious role in RussiaGate.
They haven't given back their awards.
They haven't given that because New York Times and the Washington Post both received Pulitzers for their RussiaGate coverage, or something that was a complete hoax, and they've not given it back. So what they're now doing is continuing with their lies, and in a very crafty fashion. So the New York Times has now published a story about an FBI agent who is being persecuted by Kash Patel. Now, the name of this FBI
that's how they want us to think about
exactly. It. So he's some FBI agent doing his job. He's sitting there, doing grunt work, and he's being unfairly picked on by Kash Patel for political reasons.
His boss.
Yeah, his boss. Yeah.
His boss doesn't like him. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the name of this person, is not that well known. It's known to RussiaGaters, Brian Auten. So he's like Peter Strzok. Everyone knows about Peter Strzok, but there was another guy who was really played a really malevolent role in RussiaGate, and this was Brian Auten. And not only was he involved in RussiaGate, because all these people they're involved in a number of different things. Like Strzok was involved in RussiaGate and in the Hillary Clinton server investigation, with quote investigation unquote. But Strzok was in both. Auten was in this in RussiaGate, and he was the one who pressed the FBI to drop any investigation into the Hunter Biden laptop. So at crucial moments, you find Brian Auten, and you find the New York Times defending Brian Auten. So let me just show you this article about Auten, and then we'll just look at some things about Auten's past. So here, FBI suspends employee on Patel's so-called enemies list. The employee was a longtime counterintelligence analyst who had worked on the FBI's investigation examining Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election.
As if there was. Okay, yeah.
As if there was, but it's even worse than that, because the FBI wasn't investigating Russian meddling. The FBI was investigating Donald Trump and the Trump campaign. It was a criminal investigation, essentially trying to, link Trump to some kind of Russian conspiracy. It was a criminal act, and indictments came out of it. Nothing to do with, of course, Russia, but it was a criminal investigation. This wasn't just, let's look into Russian meddling. No, it was let's look into the Trump campaign.
Because there was no Russian meddling to be found.
There wasn't. Of course there wasn't. But what they knew is that once they get this investigation rolling, then it just, they're going to suck people into it, and they can extract perjury from people, what they call perjury.
And these are process crimes.
These are process crimes, and that's what they did. That's particularly with Michael Flynn. And this was exactly what they did. This was a process crime. But in the case of Flynn, he didn't even lie. That was just, it was the FBI who lied about that. Anyway, he says here, oh, the FBI has suspended an analyst on Kash Patel's so-called enemies list. There's no enemies list. He just listed all the people who had essentially conspired against Trump, both before Trump came to power in 2017, through the Trump years, and then after Trump left office.
Well, I mean, who's so-called? Who's so calling it?
Exactly. Who's calling it?
Is
The New
this
York
Adam
Times.
Goldman? Are you saying this,
That's right. Exactly. That's right.
people with knowledge of these events? I mean, can you please tell me?
Right.
Is this your description? Is this someone else's description?
Well, that's right. Well, they always do that when they say this has been debunked. Who has debunked it? Or this has been called into question. This has been debated, disputed. By whom exactly? But but by suggesting that they're giving it some authority. So-called enemies list. You called it an enemies list. He's never called it an enemies list. After Mr. Patel told lawmakers that the Bureau under his leadership would stay out of the political fray and not punish employees for partisan reasons. But what
Well,
about
maybe
employee?
maybe they should be punished for breaking the law.
Exactly. Last week, the Bureau placed the analyst Brian Auten on administrative leave, according to people familiar with the matter. The reasons for the suspension remain unclear. Really, they're unclear. So first they say there's an enemies list. Now they say, well, it remains unclear. Well, let's look at.
Again, I mean, we're on the first slide here. The reasons for the suspension remain unclear. I mean, is it unclear to you?
That's
Who
right.
is it unclear to?
Exactly, exactly. It says the suspension is likely to raise question about whether the move was retaliatory and about how closely Mr. Patel would stick to his promise. And then about President Trump's allies to fire employees who took part in the investigations that conservatives have condemned. No, investigations that were a fraud. There were in these. So, from President Trump's allies to fire employees who took part in investigations, conservatives condemned. These were a fraud. They were fraudulent investigations. The suspension of Mr. Auten, who had already been disciplined and questioned in a criminal inquiry, will also likely intensify distrust of Mr. Patel among employees who have watched senior leaders forced out in recent months with no
Well,
explanation.
maybe with no explanation. Maybe that is the favor that Kash Patel is
Yes,
is uh, conferring on them. Because do you really want to know why
right,
you're being pushed out?
right.
Because you broke the law.
That's right.
You subverted American democracy. You went
That's right.
after with no basis
That's right.
after the president of the United States. Maybe Kash Patel is being magnanimous here.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Um, and then it says Mr. Auten worked on two major investigations that angered Mr. Trump and Mr. Patel. Huh. And what were these two major investigations? Including the FBI's investigation into Russian meddling during the 2016 presidential election. Again, mischaracterizing it. He was also involved in analyzing the information found in Hunter Biden's laptop, a discovery that roiled the 2020 presidential campaign.
Yes, we
What
were all told it was Russian disinformation.
exactly? That's the thing. They never conducted an investigation. Not
Okay,
only that, they told the social media that it's a Russian disinformation. They did the opposite of an investigation.
okay. This is again this is a craft that you must have advanced degrees to be so deceptive. He was also involved in analyzing the
That's
information
right.
found on Hunter Biden's
Right.
laptop. I mean, what were you? I mean, you didn't see what
Right.
was Hunter, but I mean, you don't even have to be a skilled investigator or
Right.
a lawyer to look through that. I have looked through parts of it. Okay, I found it really disgusting, and I didn't. There was it didn't add anything to my
Right,
life. But I mean, what was he analyzed?
right.
I don't know what there is to
And
analyze.
analyze. Well,
It's
that's
in
right.
your face.
That's right. But he didn't. But of course, he didn't do that. He essentially said, no, 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 this is a Russian disinformation. Um, and the suspension of Mr. Auten came after he and others had been disciplined for serious mistakes found in the FBI's applications for a secret surveillance warrant involving a former Trump campaign advisor.
Mistakes.
Mistakes. Now, let's
Oh,
remember this is
is
going
that what it
back
is?
to exactly. This is going back to Carter Page.
Yeah, I mean, but were these mistakes?
Exactly. Mistakes.
They were not
They were
mistakes.
not mistakes. Mr. Auten played an important role in unmasking the primary source behind the dossier of rumors and unproven assertions about Mr. Trump. So this is a Steele dossier. He had no, I mean, Steele was the one who said, yeah, it was Danchenko, Igor Danchenko. And then Danchenko said, I just made this stuff up. I mean, I just heard a lot of rumors and they just, barroom talk.
And it was expected of me because I was on the payroll.
I was in the payroll. But what did Auten do with this information? Auten, instead of dismissing, well, let's close the whole RussiaGate investigation down, Auten helped make Danchenko a confidential human source, which meant that nobody could talk to him because it was off limits. In other words, Danchenko, after having said, I don't know, I just made up, stuff that I heard, they kind of turned him into a confidential human source and therefore allowed the whole RussiaGate thing to fester for another couple of years. Then, the surveillance warrant applications relied in part on the dossier that Mr. Auten had examined extensively. No, it relied wholly on the Steele dossier, in part, wholly on this dossier. And then the Justice Department Inspector General, that's Michael Horowitz going back again 2019, found that FBI officials had sufficient reason to open Crossfire Hurricane and did not find evidence that the inquiry was politically motivated. Now, this is, of course, completely untrue. That's not what they said. They just said, well, we haven't found evidence. But ultimately, they interviewed the FBI people. Were you politically motivated in opening the investigation? No, no, no. We weren't politically motivated. That doesn't mean that they thought they had sufficient reason to open the Crossfire Hurricane. And in fact, the Durham report made clear that. And so then they say, suggesting John Durham, the special counsel appointed by Mr. Trump to scrutinize the Russian investigation, said in his final report that as an initial matter, there is no question that the FBI had an affirmative obligation to closely examine the tip that prompted the investigation. Now, let's see what Durham really said. He said, based on the review of a Crossfire Hurricane and related intelligence activities, we conclude that the department and the FBI failed to uphold their important mission of strict fidelity to the law in connection with certain events and activities described in this report. And then they talk about this Kevin Kleinsmith committed a criminal offense by fabricating language in an email that was material to the FBI obtaining a FISA surveillance order. In other instances, FBI personnel worked on that same FISA application, displayed at best a cavalier attitude towards accuracy and completeness. FBI personnel also repeatedly disregarded important requirements when they continued to seek renewals of that FISA surveillance, while acknowledging, both then and in hindsight, that they did not genuinely believe there was probable cause to believe that the target was knowingly engaged in clandestine intelligence. This is Brian Auten. This was what Brian Auten was involved in. Intelligence activities on behalf of foreign power or knowingly helping another person in such activities. And then it goes on. The senior FBI personnel displays a serious lack of analytical rigor towards the information that they received, especially information received from politically affiliated persons and entities. Um, in particular, there was a significant reliance on investigative leads provided or funded directly or indirectly by Trump's political opponents. This is the
Well, that
FBI that's relying
yeah,
on this. Um,
yeah, the Clinton campaign. Yeah.
exactly, the Clinton campaign. The department did not adequately examine or question the materials and the motivations of those providing them. Even when, at about the same time, the director of the FBI and others learned of significant and potentially contrary intelligence. That's pretty damning. And here's the New York Times championing the cause of this person. Imagine anyone else in a company. Let's say you're working in a private company, and this is a report that's published about what you've been doing while you were on the payroll. And then over willingness to rely on information. Anyway, this is the Kash Patel's book, and he talks about Brian Auten. He says about this in August 2020, 2 months before the New York Post bombshell, yet an FBI analyst named Brian Auten allegedly tried to discredit any derogatory information about Hunter Biden by falsely claiming that none of it was true. Auten was another player in the Crossfire Hurricane investigation into Russian collusion, who, according to the Justice Department Inspector General, knew that there were lies within the Steele dossier, but moved forward with a corrupt spying operation on the Trump campaign anyway. He also personally pushed for the very FISA warrants against Carter Page that excluded exculpatory evidence. Not only that, but Auten even interviewed Steele's primary source, a man by the name Igor Danchenko, who told him that large portions of the Steele dossier were inaccurate, false, and bore no resemblance to reality. And then Auten and his co-conspirators at the FBI, by all accounts, hid this damning indictment of the Steele dossier as they used the dossier to spy on the Trump campaign. Um, and this is, and then again, Auten acted, and then Auten faced no real accountability in light of these findings. And the fact that Auten was not fired from the FBI and prosecuted for his part in RussiaGate conspiracy is a national embarrassment. And for some reason, this book he wrote 2023, Auten is still there. It's like after everything else, Auten still has a job on the government payroll. Uh, um, and this is the what Durham said about Auten. He said here again that no FBI personnel who were interviewed by the office called Crossfire Hurricane personnel taking any action to vet the Clinton plan intelligence. This was the Clinton plan essentially to smear Trump campaign. For example, Brian Auten stated that he could not recall anything that the FBI did to analyze or otherwise consider the Clinton plan intelligence, saying it was just one data point.
It was the only point.
It was the only point. This stands in sharp contrast to its substantial reliance on the uncorroborated Steele reports, which at least some FBI personnel appeared to know was likely being funded or promoted by the Clinton campaign. And then so again, Brian Auten then went in October 2016 to interview Steele, and then they offered Steele. During this meeting, the interviewers informed Steele in sum that the FBI might be willing to pay Steele in excess of $1 million if he could provide corroborating evidence of the allegations contained in his reporting. I still find that kind of amazing that you can just offer somebody $1 million to provide corroborating evidence. I mean, why? I mean, shouldn't he already be providing the
Yeah, it's your report.
It's your report. I mean, you expect somebody who provides a report to provide the corroborating evidence to go with that report. $1 million. That's quite a budget they have there at the FBI. They can just give somebody $1 million. The FBI also admonished Steele about the need to have an exclusive reporting relationship with the FBI because by the time the FBI had been made aware of the fact that Steele had also been providing his reports to the State Department through his State Department official, Jonathan Weiner, and then Weiner had been providing the reports to, among others, then
That's right.
U.S. That's right, the U.S. Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, Victoria Nuland. So Nuland always, wherever the action is,
That's right.
a confidant of former Secretary of State Clinton. Notwithstanding these red flags, when interviewed by the office, neither Auten or some other agent has any recollection of addressing the Yahoo News concerns with Steele, which was the sort of the double dipping when they put in the Yahoo News story as if somehow this was an independent corroboration.
Circular.
Exactly, circular reporting. Anyway, so in interviews with the office, Auten had no recollection of who told him that Steele was not the source of the
Oh, I
Yahoo
don't
News.
remember.
That's right.
The
So
biggest
Auten,
story of his life.
that's right. So Auten claims that Steele was not the source of the Yahoo News articles. He claims this. This is absolute nonsense. This is they went and lied to the Pfizer court, or the Steele is not the source of the Yahoo News article. But Auten said his contemporaneous understanding at the time of the Rome meeting was that Handling Agent 1 had provided that information. Handling Agent 1, however, emphatically denied asking Steele about the Yahoo News article. Was it, well, that's convenient not to ask him, hey, are you the source of this story? Because it sounds awfully like your report. So you don't even ask. So you go to Rome, very nice, take a trip to Rome to see Christopher Steele, and then you don't ask him the most obvious question. And then this is, if you remember, Carter Page sued a number of people in the FBI. Eventually, the case was thrown out, not because of the substance of the case, but judgeable. They said, hey, they have sovereign immunity. They're working in their official capacities, and as an individual, you can't sue them. You can sue anyone who actually you catch illegally surveilling you. I mean, somebody who's actually, putting a bug on your phone or something. But the people who gave the orders for the surveillance, they enjoy sovereign immunity.
And they wrecked his life.
And they wrecked his life. Yeah. And here he is. Brian Auten served as a supervisor intelligence analyst at the FBI. He also worked as an adjunct professor and writer on spying ethics. Oh, that's nice. He's also an adjunct professor. Auten was assigned to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation from its inception in July 2016 and supervised its analytical efforts throughout 2017. He played a key supportive role for the agents preparing the Pfizer applications, including reviewing the probable cause section of the applications and providing agents with information about Steele's subsources. And then Auten assisted the case agents in providing information on the reliability of Steele and his sources and reviewing for accuracy their information cited. And then Auten falsely enhanced the credibility of Steele. While most of Steele's past reporting as an informant for the FBI had not been corroborated and had never been used in a criminal proceeding, Auten wrote that it had in fact been corroborated and used in the criminal proceedings.
This guy's still in the FBI.
That's right, still in the FBI. Auten failed to disclose to the Pfizer court negative feedback from British intelligence service colleagues of Steele. They told Auten during a visit he made to London in December 2016 that Steele exercised poor judgment and pursued as sources people with political risk, but no intel value. Auten demanded that some of the allegations in Steele's reports, Auten determined that some of the allegations in Steele's reports were inaccurate, such as the allegation that Paul Manafort used Dr. Page as an intermediary, but he did not include this information in any of the applications for the Pfizer warrants. So he just said, oh, he's really credible, even when you knew he wasn't credible. And then Auten also identified issues with Steele's subsources. Auten knew of and met with Danchenko. Auten knew that Danchenko was based in the United States, yet intentionally misrepresented or failed to correct the statement in the applications for the third and fourth FISA warrants that Danchenko was Russia-based. He's supposed to be senior figure in the Russian government. While Auten found Danchenko to be truthful and cooperative, he also found that Danchenko contradicted key claims in Steele's reports. Even though Auten knew Steele was working for the Clinton campaign, by early January 2017, he did not seek to include this information in the applications for the third and fourth FISA warrants. And then this is a report from the Republican staff report for the House Judiciary Committee about the Hunter Biden laptop. In August 2020, FBI Supervisor Intelligence Analyst Brian Auten created an assessment that caused derogatory information on Hunter Biden to be falsely labeled as disinformation. And then it says, additionally, whistleblowers disclosed that investigators from FBI headquarters placed their findings regarding Hunter Biden information was disinformation in a restricted access subfile and so on. So, in other words, he succeeded in closing down that investigation into Hunter Biden. So this is the great guy, Brian Auten, whom the New York Times has rushed to defend, this noble, humble, selfless civil servant is being persecuted by Kash Patel.
Well, this is why people hate government.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay? I mean, you have such a cavalier attitude towards the responsibilities. You take an oath. These people take an oath.
Right.
And they treat it in such a cavalier way. Yeah, I'm sure he's all lawyered up and everything, and he's living in his mansion somewhere in Virginia suburb.
Yep.
Okay. Well, what about Carter Page? What happened to him?
That's right. Remember, he was really smeared, and in a really disgusting fashion, including by some Republicans. That Republican creature Trey Gowdy, who I think now.
What a huge disappointment that guy was.
Yeah,
wow.
He has a job at Fox News, but Trey Gowdy smeared him and suggested that, boy, this guy needs a lawyer. When Carter Page says, "I don't need a lawyer," I'm gonna.
Because Carter Page, he's like a Boy Scout, because he ended up cooperating with the CIA, and that was not to be disclosed.
Right.
Because I remember when he was on Laura Ingraham a couple times, and he did look like a goofball. But now I know why.
Right.
Because he couldn't disclose.
Right.
He was a Boy Scout. I'm going to keep my word. I said I wouldn't say anything, and he didn't, because he ended up kind of sounding odd. Right. I remember that very clearly.
Yep.
And it's because there was extenuating circumstances.
Right. No, that's right. That's right. And then you have this guy Klein Smith, who forges an email.
And what did he get?
A tap on the wrist. He did no prison time, and he got a temporary.
He got his license back.
And I can't get my mind around that. At the very least, even if you don't do jail time, anybody else would do jail time when you forge a government document. I mean, when you do your IRS form, it says here, this isn't a federal document. If you say anything untruthful here, you will be prosecuted and you will do time. And that's just on your IRS form. But here he forges a document and he doesn't do prison time. But at the very least, well, surely he's going to be disbarred. No, a couple of years. And he's back practicing law. I mean, how can you practice law when you've done something like that? How can you in any way have any kind of integrity when you've done something like that?
Paul Manafort went to prison.
He went to prison, yeah. I mean, it's just so flagrant. I mean, it's like, you're supposed to be a lawyer. They have all these lawyers' ethics, and they have to pass ethics exams, and they have these really very strict rules about ethics. You can't practice law if you've in any way fallen short of your ethical obligations. And then they do this, and that's why I have a lot of sympathy for Trump going after these big law firms. They deserve nothing.
And here we go again. we have this professional managerial class. They're always the victims, George. They're victims. No, these guys are maniacs,
Right.
okay? Because they
Right.
know that they'll get that on the pages of the New York Times, they're going to be given comfort and cover, okay?
Right.
This guy should be in jail,
I think so.
okay?
Yeah.
He should be in jail for what
Right.
he's done, okay?
Yeah.
And
And I think
and he
that's
should
true.
be forced to, probably not legal, forced to help in the future to compensate people like Carter Page.
Yeah. I
He
agree.
helped destroy.
I mean, it's really an absolute disgrace that no one has really paid a price
No
for
one.
RussiaGate, for given the depravity, the real depravity and malevolence of what they did, of cooking up. You know, you can't get a more serious conspiracy than that, to allege that the president, or a man aspiring to be president, is working as an agent of a foreign government. I mean, that's as serious as you can get. And they did this. They lied about it. They made it out of whole cloth, and no one has paid a price for it. So,
It's the same thing building the case against Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. It's the same mindset,
right,
okay?
right.
The perpetrators are always, oh, but we were doing we were we're the virtuous party in all of
That's right.
this,
That's
okay?
right.
It happens time and again. The RussiaGate one will always stand out for to me is that these people took an oath to defend the law,
Right.
and they what they did was they poured the vast, immense resources of the state
Right.
against an innocent man. You can like or hate Donald Trump. I don't care either way. But what they did to him is what they did to him is the reason why he's back in the White House.
That what exactly that why he's back, and the poison that they introduced into the American political bloodstream, and into the world political bloodstream, the hatred, hostility towards Russia, the whole European obsession about Russian interference in this, Russian interference in
Where
that.
did they get it,
They
George?
got it exactly. They got it from America. They got it from that. That's where they cooked this up. That somehow wherever you turn, the Russians are there. And it was a hoax. It was a complete hoax. And just like these European claims are a hoax, the Europeans have never been able to present any evidence for all these claims. And yet they go on repeating them ad nauseum. So they've introduced this poison, but none of them has suffered. And you know, the people who should suffer most, Hillary Clinton, but above all Obama, because Obama used his office. He was president at the time. He used the power and prestige of his office to, you know, pump oxygen
What
into
was
this
that nitwit's
fraud.
name? She ran for Congress and she lost.
Oh, Evelyn Farkas.
There you go. She said it on national television.
Yeah,
You know, we were getting Obama lowered the threshold for those that have access to confidential information, and we were to get on the Hill. We were going to gather all
that's
the
right.
information we could.
That's
I
right.
mean, in plain sight.
That's right. And push it all out. Push it all out to our friends. All of this information. Now, that's right. She absolutely said it. But she holds some kind of, you know, she's in that think tank world. I can't remember where she's got some kind of a big position at some think tank, you
Oh
know.
yeah, what was her? Scary Poppins. She's also Nina
Yeah,
Jankovic.
Nina, what's the name? Yeah, yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, Nina Jankovic, I think is her
Yeah.
name is. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I like Scary Poppins
Yeah,
better.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. But the Evelyn Farkas is itself a kind of a mystery. How did she get this very senior position that she had in the Pentagon, and now she's the director of something or other. You know,
They're
like
all nitwits. They're
they're
just
all
all
yeah,
nitwits.
yeah. It's amazing. But I mean, I guess the statute of limitations has passed on RussiaGate, but you can still hold these people in before Congress and set perjury traps for them.
Well, I'm, you know, you correct me if I'm wrong, George, but I mean, if you work in the FBI, then you serve at the pleasure of the director, don't you?
Yes, yes,
Presumably, this guy's got a pension already.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, you remember Andrew McCabe? Now McCabe,
Oh
you know,
God.
he was fired. He was the number two at the
For lack
FBI.
of candor. I
The
love that.
lack
For
of
lack
candor.
of
So he
candor.
was fired, and then I think he got fired, and then he did the whole what's that thing when you do crowdfunding? He did the crowdfunding, in no time at all. I mean, millions and millions
And
of,
he got his pension
and then he
back.
got his pension back. So he kept the millions, and he got a pension, and he got a gig at CNN. He's that kind of national security correspondent at CNN. I mean, you got rewarded. I mean, this is
The FBI fired him.
the FBI fired him, exactly. The FBI fired him, and it wasn't even over RussiaGate. It was about something else that he had lied to their own investigation, the Inspector General's own investigation. He actually lied to the Inspector General about leaks to the Wall Street Journal and so on. And he got fired. And then, oh my God, let me write a check to him. This poor man who's now going to be out on the street, and so he got this huge
Yeah,
sum of
these are the
money.
same people that wrote a check had BLM pins and Ukraine pin, all this other nonsense.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
diversity is our strength. Yeah,
That's right. And then you got to imagine, CNN, which is absolutely disgusting. Oh, he's our national security correspondent. Oh, yes, well,
well, it's like Judith Miller appearing on Fox News.
that's right.
These people just fail upwards.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Right?
She was fired. That's not that easy to accomplish, to get fired from the New York Times for being a bad reporter. I mean, it's like it goes with the territory when the New York Times that you're a bad reporter, but they fired her. Oh, she gave misleading stories. Oh no, New York Times was publishing
Misleading.
misleading stories. Oh, whoa. Um, yeah, but and Peter Strzok, I mean, he's one of the worst. I think he's at MSNBC. I think he's the national security guy. Again,
He's a professor too.
a professor. Yes, yes, a professor. I mean, exactly. That tells you something about the universities, that they hire somebody like Peter Strzok to be a professor. Imagine people take classes for credit from Peter Strzok. Or James
And
Comey. James Comey, I think, is
and
also a
and and,
professor.
and there was a concerted campaign to exclude Norman Finkelstein from any academic
Right.
job. I think when he was at DePaul, now this is years ago, his annual salary, I think, was $28,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's just getting by.
That's just getting by.
I
Yeah.
mean, Norman seems like a pretty
Austere.
thank you for the word, austere person. And they wouldn't even let him have that. Do you know that there was a pressure campaign? He was renting an apartment. I think I'm remembering this correctly. They wanted to force the landlord to turn his electricity off. I, that's really
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
But if you curry favor with the powerful, you're fine.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, you won't even be humiliated,
Right.
okay? You'll be elevated.
That's right. That's right.
This is a crisis of government that people have
Yep.
because you know you know look at the Democratic Party. Three primaries in a row were rigged.
Good.
I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
everything works against you.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. But it is an amazing thing is that ultimately these people were working for powerful interests. Strzok, McCabe, Auten. And if you are working for powerful interests, then you get positions in prestigious universities. So, where do they get their professorships? Well, at Georgetown. Not just some, rinky-dink community college. No, it's at Georgetown. That's the thing. I think like Masha, you remember little Masha Jovanovic? I was fired. It's so mean and so unfair. Trump fired me, and everybody cried when she
Well,
testified.
apparently, when she was giving her testimony, Trump was tweeting about her.
And the way it was covered, I remember Chris Wallace. Oh God, Chris Wallace was on the brink of tears for this woman, an ambassador who was fired. Apparently it's a job that you have for life as an ambassador. And she got a professorship at Georgetown.
Well, I mean, look. I'm sure you saw the story. This I don't remember her last name is Brink, I think her name is, the ambassador, American ambassador to Ukraine.
Yeah.
She's still there?
Yeah. It's a very good point. I was wondering about that as well. Yeah.
What? Well, how is it
Still
she's
there.
still there?
Yeah.
On
I don't
inauguration day, she should have packed her bags and left.
exactly. And that I kind of, we keep people keep talking about how ruthless Trump is. He basically, I think Obama did this. I'm not sure about
He
Obama.
did. He fired
He fired
everybody.
everyone. He said
Yeah.
I expect every single ambassador to submit a letter of resignation. And then after that, you're gone. And that's what you would expect when you have a new administration. I want everybody to submit a letter of resignation. So, and is she still there? I just it's quite. And again, I was stunned about Auten because I remember Auten from years ago, and I thought, oh yeah, well they cleaned house, they got rid of all of the people. Even somebody as ineffectual as Christopher Wray would have known that it's embarrassing to keep these people on. But no, he's still
What
there.
about that Orr guy? Is he still or
Russo, yeah, I want, yeah, that's right. And then of course he had his wife, I can't remember her first name, who was working for Fusion GPS, who I think was clearly involved with Steele. I mean, I think she was providing a lot of the information for Steele. But that's a good question whether Bruce Orr is still there. That requires some investigation. Is Bruce
Well,
Orr?
there was it's an old joke. I mean, it was for my father's generation, but there was um, uh, uh, a private first class was supposed to deliver a letter to the Pentagon, and he got lost in the Pentagon, which is easy to do. It's a big
It's a
building.
huge building.
They found him 30 years later. He was a four-star general.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how or why. Okay, it just disappeared, then came back. Okay. Yeah, that $1 trillion, that $1 trillion budget.
Right.
What would you do with that? Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's build another airplane that can't fly.
But the amazing thing about $1 trillion is that it's still not going to be enough. Next
Oh,
year's
it's never
budget
enough.
request is going to be for more than it's going to be for $1.1 trillion. The problem, of course, with that is that you're supposed to be paring back the federal government. I mean, that's part of the Trumpian economic agenda. You have to start paring back government in a serious way, not just trim a million here or a couple of million there. I mean, serious budget cuts. But the $1 trillion, I mean, I don't
Kind
can't
of
quite
defeats
get your
the
head
whole
around that
thing.
one.
Defeats the whole thing,
Right.
in my opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
can't pass an audit.
Right. No,
Can't pass an audit. Don't give them more money. Okay.
right, right.
All
Exactly.
right, everybody. This is our conclusion of our mega wrap, our Sunday mega wrap. Um, uh, George did an excellent job forensically going through this latest iteration of RussiaGate. And I think, we kind of always try to have a little bit of joke and levity about the tip jar, but that's work.
Yeah.
That's real work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most people in our lane, they just flip their gums and, oh, a good buddy told me yesterday and all
Yeah.
that. Okay. Which is all fine.
Right.
Okay. But not very many people go dig, look at the footnotes.
Right.
What does that say? George showed how the New York Times was woefully dishonest.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 No.
So I think you get the point. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll let George wind up here, but this is Sunday. We have a live stream, God willing. If God wills it, we'll have a live stream tomorrow, 10 o'clock Eastern time. I'm almost done, buddy. And then on Tuesday, he goes solo.
That's right. And what Buddy is saying here, it wasn't him. He didn't do the legwork. Buddy did the legwork. I need the credit. My work, my tip jar. Give me the money already. So I think that's Buddy point. He wants that tip jar full, and I want it full soon. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology. And above all, we'll say sorry to Buddy. Yeah, it was you. You did all the legwork. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.